the talks in the next session, but you have until then to watch them because I'll be referring to them, which means it would be a bit difficult for you to know what I'm talking about if you didn't watch at least the two talks, the two performances by Walid Raad. Now what you are seeing so far, just to refresh your memories, is that Raad is a quite self-aware artist in the sense that for him doing art is really placing yourself in a cultural, political context. And if you want to do photographies or installations or whatever you want to do, you have to be aware of the different cultural currents, political biases, the way the news portrays things. And so when you talk about something, you have to be aware of that. So you see, Walid Raad has two phases, like two epochs, two phases. The first phase is really under the umbrella of the Atlas Group project. And as he puts it, it's from 1989 till 2004. And then in 2004, something happens, and he changes his discourse. So far, more or less, even though it's a bit mixed, we have seen the first phase. We're not done with it yet. But I remind you that the first phase main conceptuality is that whatever you are dealing with, you have a gap between what we call the kind of document and its meaning. You have a gap between the meaning and the referent. And actually, the meaning is established depending on your strategies to survive, to dominate, or to propagate a type of culture rather than another type. We've seen that so far in detail with the hostage crisis, where the documents were actually the way they read not documents in this case, if you want, the given, which is the hostages. This is what you call the abstract object. The way they read it, in order to read it, they provide documents that is going to favor a meaning which favors a way of life or a specific culture. So if you have the hostage crisis, this is for Walid Raad an abstract object. You can't really say exactly what it is. You have to say what it is for who. So for the American administration, as you have seen, the hostage crisis was a symptom of the unhealth of the American administration. That's it. If you take for Iran or for Hezbollah, the hostage crisis is going to be a political action against the oppression of the United States, or a leverage in order to negotiate with the United States. So you see here how the readings vary. So this is why what is really important in the first phase of Walid Raad is to see that you have a gap between the abstract object or the given and the establishment of the meaning of such a given. What comes in between are all these documents that are supposed to give the meaning of the given. We have seen that in the Bashar tapes, Walid Raad really provides a kind of, in quote, counter document. I mean, he's going to read all the memoirs of those who were kidnapped. He's going to watch the TV, the news, what Reagan said, what the wife of Weir said, etc., etc. He's going to read all the reports from the White House, the Congress, and the like. And after doing all this work, he's going to really condense all the biases, cliches, presupposition about what it is or what it means or what it could imply to be kidnapped in the Middle East by a group which is obscure, terrorist, and the like. And this is what he is playing on. This is for the Bashar tapes. I hope you remember this one. Now, if you continue in this line, you have seen the Al-Hadath project. And for that, last time, I've reconstructed more or less briefly a short history of the birth of Lebanon, with colonialism, the French interest, how they duplicated Paris in the Orient, meaning here in Beirut, and how they turned Beirut into this base for their economical and military enterprise. Now, what you need to see is that this is history as such. What you need to see is that Walid Raad, he's going to make now a photography or a photographical project that's going to dialogue with these duplications, with this kind of exploitation of the colonial powers that are implemented here, by establishing a causal relation between himself and Adget, and then between himself and Adget and Walker events. I hope this is clear. If you remember last time, Gilbert said that actually the images that Walid is taking express the loss of home because, you know, he comes from a country where your home most probably is lost because of a bombardment or because you immigrate and stuff like that. And that actually is what's in this photo is simply the expression of this kind of personal, melancholic loss of home. And what I've told you last time is that here you see how this reading is going to block all Raad enterprise and its political and historical dimensions by coupling the image to loss of home. Okay, and this is what you're doing in these two today too, which means when you give a meaning to something, in this case the given is a photography, when you just give it a meaning like this is a loss of home, of course, and then when you say that Walid Raad is great because look, he's doing like Adget, you lose all the subversive, activist kind of photography that Walid Raad is trying to implement. Walid Raad becomes a kind of nice photographer who knows his art history well, and he's trying to do like Adget. And because he's very sad and melancholic, he goes and he takes picture of his destroyed home. And there is a resemblance with what Adget used to do. It's not like that at all. So I give you now the other version. And you have to be able to get to become sensitive to both versions. Raad says, me, I didn't take them for the loss of home or anything. And Adget is not that he is an idol or something like that. It's simply that Adget used to take these photos in 1928, 30. This is the time of the colonization of Lebanon. And actually, this is why the shops were full in Paris, and they're now empty here because of that. So in the same cause that led Adget to take pictures of Paris in its opulence and its kind of riches is actually what is making me today take pictures in Beirut in its poverty and in its abandonment and also in the war. Because, as I told you last time, one of the major causes of the war is the construction of a state, which is called Lebanon, as an unstable state. If you read Trabulsi says Lebanon had never existed before 1920 something, meaning between Goros announced it. And it's not that Lebanon has like a millennial history. As an entity, it doesn't exist until the French constructed it as such. And of course, these tensions, this kind of artificial construction, is what led more or less, or with other factors, to the Lebanese civil wars and Walid Raad taking pictures of kind of emptied shops, destroyed buildings, and the like. Okay. Now I hope you see this kind of reading, counter-reading. Reading of Alan Gilbert is that loss of home, melancholia, subjective stuff, and looking up to your role model. Reading of Walid Raad is much more political and self-conscious of the situation. Okay? So I hope this is clear. So what we're going to do today, it's like a game. I read you what the guy says, and I read the answer of Walid Raad, and you tell me if he's answering or not. So this is another project. It's called Secrets in the Open Sea. You see it here. It's like these big photographs, all blue, So you have many of them. You have dark blue, light blue, whatever you want. It's usually blue, a huge blue surface. And then you see here in the corner, it's not very visible, it's tiny. Down in the left corner for you, there's a tiny picture, and if you look closely, if you have a better resolution, you see that it's a picture with very little people standing next to each other. So I will read you how Bochart-Hume is another critique that I consider makes colonial readings of Raad. I hope by now you understood that colonialism is not that if you're just born in France, you're a colonial, ferocious, awful person. He's not saying that. He's not saying that at all. He's saying that what you call Eurocentrism or Libanocentrism or Iranocentrism or whatever centrism we want to deal with, it's very simple. You think that the relation between the abstract X and meaning is transparent and it fits your culture. This is, if you want, Eurocentrism in short, or centrisms in short are these. Now, of course, Eurocentrism has a very peculiar relation between the given and the meaning, because in Eurocentrism, the given is supposed to be a singularity, meaning something you see, and the meaning is supposed to be a universality, meaning something that everyone must agree on. Okay? Or something which has a humane, universal value. I hope you're getting this couple. If you read Hegel or Plato or anyone, for Plato you have the cube and the ideal cube, and the ideal cube is the absolute truth about the cube. You can't tell him that, well, you know, I have an Indian cube or a Lebanese cube. No, he tells you, no, the cube is the cube, and this is what it means, and that's it. This way of thinking is more or less what is being criticized under the label Eurocentrism. This is why Europe is Greek. Not because Greece is in Europe, but because the Greeks are those who introduced this way of thinking where it seems that meaning depends on reason, and there's only one reason, and this reason can assign the meaning of everything, knowing that everything are singularities, this, and that, and you access their meaning via a pure reasonable process. Now, of course, against that, which is a kind of modernist trope, this is modernity functions like that, you have what you call postmodernity, where they tell you that no, reason is not that reasonable, and what you consider reasonable might have political pressures, psychological pressures, etc. And what seems to be reasonable for you might be most of the time, if not all the time, motivated by very obscure and unreasonable desires. And this is what we have seen with the hostage crisis, Bashar tapes, and the like. You know, for the administration, they are very reasonable. What Walid Raad tries to show is that no, beneath this reason you have something else. You have the desire to show that they are right, everyone is wrong, and this is how things are. Okay? So I will read you the quote by Bochart-Hume in an interview by Walid Raad. It's in Miraculous Beginnings, the book. And Hume, about this photography, Hume says, he's talking about this picture here. Hume says, blue, with its symbolism of promise, a bright blue sky on a sunny day, neutrality, the helmets of the NATO peacekeeping forces in the Middle East, and romantic longing, Novalis blue flower, which despite endless searching can never be found. Novalis blue flower that you can never be found. I hope this reminds you of Plato's cube. So as much as its rich tradition in Western art, from the blue of the Virgin's cloak and the medieval paintings to Yves Klein's patented YKB blue, takes center stage and secrets in the open sea. Okay, so the blue, which is the blue of Novalis, of the blue sky, of hope, of humanity, of the NATO, has a central place in this work, which is secrets in the open sea. At the same time, the electric blue of one of the plates in particular is reminiscent of the technicolor blue sky, whose terrifying beauty made news reports on the events of the 9/11, all that bit more unsettling. Curiously, when Mount, etc., erupted in April 2010, and all air traffic was banned across Europe, the sky over London once more appeared digitally blue, which makes me wonder whether it is only by way of disasters, natural or man-made, that we can experience an undisturbed blue sky over our metropolis. Okay? I hope you got what he is saying. So for him, you have blue skies, this is a singularity, and he refers to all of these more or less idealities, which are novelties, humanity, peacekeeping, the NATO's blue helmets, and the like. So this is what Walid Raad replies. The encounters with the prince in the George Eastman house, it's a kind of museum, and the paintings in the Albright Knox Art Gallery, and the daily phone calls to Beirut must have combined into a potent cocktail that at the time failed to blend smoothly with the chemical and optical experiments unfolding in my darkroom. For some time, the experiences sat one on top of the other like oil on water. It took another 15 years for the blend to mix in such works as Secrets in the Open Sea. Okay, so I hope you got what he said. What he said is that he used to go to this museum as an art student, and he used to work in his photographical lab as an art student, and he used to see all of these huge monochromes by modern painters. But in the same time, what used to happen, he used to receive phone calls from his family who used to live in Beirut and talk to him about or inform him about the bombardments of Lebanon back then. So I hope now you get this other reading. Did he answer what the guy is telling him? I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? Sorry, did he reply really to Hume? No. You see, Hume is saying, you're blue.
It's the same concept.
Huh?
It's the same concept. He's saying the same thing.
As who?
As Hume.
I'm asking you, is he saying the same thing or absolutely something absolutely which has nothing to do? Hume is saying your blue refers to humanity, blue sky. He mentions briefly about the disaster at the end, which is when the volcano erupted in London, they saw the blue sky. So maybe this blue refers to that blue. What is he saying? Is he saying that this blue refers first to the sky, to any sky, or anyway it refers to modern art, monochromes, this like Yves Klein. Yves Klein. Does he say that I'm doing like Yves Klein in any way? No. Does he say that actually I'm trying to express blue because blue is peace and neutrality and I want to bring peace to my country? No. Okay, so what is he saying? How he ended up with this? Yeah.
Like he related to the historical background that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how it affected him personally, or he got in touch with it.
Exactly. And what is the montage? It's between what and what?
The paintings he was exposed to and the phone call.
Exactly. So actually it's his existential situation as an immigrant which makes it such that you end up with this kind of thing. Because as an immigrant, you're in New York, what are you looking at? You're looking at, let's say, you're in the Modern Art Museum, and you're looking at Yves Klein, let's say, even though he wasn't looking at that exactly, but he was looking at some kind of monochrome. And while he was looking at that, or just after, he receives a call from his mom telling him that they're bombarding Beirut. And for him, this is the montage. You see, this is like a strict existential, historical, political situation which has almost nothing to do with doing an art that refers to. And this is what he's doing. He's saying, my work does it like that. And if you want to read symptoms, I hope you'll do that in your essays on Walid Raad. You'll read symptoms and stuff like that. What is really symptomatic in the quote of Bochar to Hume? There's something like missing here, and that he's not talking about, even though it is half of this work of art. What isn't he talking about?
He isn't talking about the picture?
The small picture. Okay? He's really not talking about the small picture. For him, this work of art only consists of the blue without the small picture, which is quite symptomatic. Meaning it seems that spontaneously he doesn't want to deal with that, or for him this is not important. And what you need to see in these readings of Walid Raad is that this is exactly what is important. Yeah. The fact that someone puts aside or doesn't pay attention to something in the work of art is what is important, because this is where you see the symptom in action, or when you see a symptomatic behavior. Okay? So I hope the first one is clear. So I will read you the second one. I hope you'll find a pattern. So second one in this kind of football game, because it's like a game. If you read the interview, you have it in the readings between Hume and Raad. It's like he's trying to put him there, meaning you're a great artist, you like Roscoe and Klein and stuff like that. And he's telling him, no, sorry, there's a mistake. I'm not like that at all. I'm something else. Okay? So quote number 2. Still about the blue thing. Large expanses of a single color, to some degree, always act as blank screens for the viewer's projection of her own interior world of associations and ideas. So first, did you get now the couple? What is the couple here? What is he putting with what? Exactly. So he's reading now the blue blank screen to what? To interiority. As this is what you call, if you want, the Eurocentric kind of formula. You look at something and here, what is its meaning? Is this kind of interior life that you have? And what does it allow you to do? To project on the screen. So I'll reply with Raad's quote. So Raad says, I occasionally also experience the monochrome as a highly encrypted surface. I experience the monochrome as a highly encrypted surface filled with signs addressed to an unknown addressee. So it's filled with written signs that are being sent somewhere. This may tangentially be linked to my experience in Lebanon, where a highly politicized and militarized space had given rise to numerous methods of dissimulation and encryption. So what is he saying? First, is he saying that this is empty? No, he's saying actually it's saturated and it's filled. And why does he think that it's filled? Because in Lebanon, if you live in Lebanon, what seems to be like a blank surface is actually highly encrypted. What is really symptomatic, another one, is that if you read now the description of Secrets in the Open Sea, Secrets on the Open Sea description, meaning how Walid Raad presents this work, he says that this work actually was found in a destroyed building. So there was a car bomb or something, or a bombardment, he doesn't say. A building collapsed, and while they were removing the rubble, they found something like 26 huge photographic prints, and they were all blue. Okay. Now, in order to know what these photos were about, they've sent them to a lab, and they paid a lot of money in France. And in France, the lab was able to extract the photos that was hidden inside the blue, which is the small photo here that you see down. And you had a lot of work on the latent image, meaning the image which is hidden under the other image. And this is how you're able to get what's inside the hidden image.
How can they hide
Huh?
How can they hide it?
It's not really hidden, but this is a story about that. The story about that is that these photos went into a distortion. Let's say they burned or they were overexposed or whatever, and they became blue. And actually, when you take them to a lab, you discover that if you analyze clearly the blue, you'll see a portrait of a lot of people that you can extract from beneath the blue, and you put it under the blue. Okay? Now, of course, here, what is he replaying? He's replaying the gray, the rubble from which you get the things. I don't know if you have seen last time the images from the 2006 bombardments, even though this project is before. 2006 bombardments, how do things look? I'll show you how do things look in a bombardment? remember your Walid Raad? I think it's here. No. If you look at that here, if you take here and you zoom at this is a monochrome, okay? If you look at destroyed places, they have a monochromic kind of thing. And Walid Raad did another project which is this one. Now, this one is the same project as Secrets and the Open Sea, but where the story goes that the big pictures were gray. And they were actually taken from beneath the rubble. And now I hope you got what he's saying. What he's saying is that in a place like Lebanon, these monochromatic kind of experiences, they are highly encrypted, not because this space is militarized. As you know, when you look at the sky in Lebanon, what do you usually look for? If you remember these things. So either rockets or Israeli airplanes. And you look, is this a cloud or is it an Israeli trace, Israeli, trail? And this is what he's saying. Here, these big monochromatic surfaces are highly militarized and encrypted. Actually, you can look at everything as an encrypted surface. Oh. Now, as a migrant, the sea is beneath the sea. What do you have as a migrant? At his time, it wasn't yet that obvious, but today you hear it all over the place. It's called Secrets in the Open Sea. In the Mediterranean, what do you have under the sea? Huh? No. In relation to immigration? Huh? Fish don't migrate. You have dead migrants. You know these stories. You have corpses. Who are the corpses? All those who try to travel to Europe by crossing the Mediterranean, they drown, and this is why they die there. I think it's an image that relates migration into all these different ways. I think Secrets in the Open Sea talks about his experience as an immigrant in the US, but also it's an image of migration today and all these people who die under the sea. And you have this kind of encryption of these blue surfaces that actually hide a lot of dead people or other. In the same way as in the first project, there was hidden corpses under the gray rubble. And when he puts you a gray surface with dead people, and actually in the story, these are dead people, they died together in an accident. So the story goes that these people in the picture, usually they are people who died together. Usually people who died together either in a bombardment or airplane crash or stuff like that, but he's referring to these collapses of buildings. So I hope this is clear, okay? Okay. So now I'll read you another one and we start introducing other things. So this is still in the same interview, and this is the third quote. So in the interview, Hume says, ever since Rodchenko's pure red color, Rodchenko is a guy who makes huge monochromes like that, pure yellow color and pure blue color, the format of the monochrome has been employed to speculate about the limits of art. So you use monochromes to speculate about art, particularly painting and its continuous viability to act as an arena for the exploration of philosophical thought. So here, what is the couple? It's the same story, but Exactly. It's speculation about, philosophical speculation about the art's history and the color. So I'll read you now the reply by Raad. My approach here is similar to that of some documentary photographer. I produce an image by borrowing historical facts. For example, the color that appears as yellow in plate 10, a history of a title, is on loan from the cover of a decades-old art historical book in Arabic. The same goes for all the lines, shapes, and forms that appear as images and words in the same series. it may very well be that what appears as the letter P in the words that spell the phrase post-war contemporary art in Lebanon in plate 10 is but a line whose shape is all too often confused for a P. This confusion is not an obstacle to be overcome, rather it is central for the survival and possible availability of this line to artists in the future. So I will show you the pictures he's referring to. And we'll introduce now the break and the phase 2 in not this one. You see, Walid Raad made a work after the Atlas group called Scratchings on Things I Could Disavow, which is part of phase 2, which means it's after 2004. And in phase 2, what he makes images like that. Okay? And here you see the different plates that he borrows from documents that he found usually in Lebanon in the visual field. So I hope you see that what Hume is saying, he's saying that what you're doing is to reflect philosophically on the limits of painting, of photography, and the like. And what is he saying? He's saying, well, no, I'm not doing that. I'm trying literally to save, like when you save someone, some colors, curves, letters, and numbers for a future generation. Now, why is he trying to save that? And this is when I want to introduce a new concept, which is the withdrawal of tradition past a surpassing disaster. I don't know if you are familiar with the thinker and artist Jalal Toufic. Yeah? Okay. So this is a concept that comes from Jalal Toufic that we will study in detail soon. So the concept is that when you have a surpassing disaster, like the Lebanese Civil War, or the Nakba, or Hiroshima, the atomic bomb, or whatever surpassing disaster, what happens is that tradition withdraws. What does it mean? It means that the meaning of things become inaccessible, and when you look at things, you don't really understand what they are. Jalal Toufic, in this regard, gives the example of the trampling of the Quran during the confrontation between Ali and Muawiyah. I don't know if you know the story. In Islam, at one point, there's a confrontation between what will become Shi'ism and the followers of Muawiyah, what will become Sunnism. And in this confrontation, the guys of Muawiyah, they decided to put the Quran on the lances, to raise them like that. And this, for Jalal Toufic, was a moment of withdrawal of tradition. Because after that, the Quran as such, as it was alive in the times of the Prophet, withdrew. Meaning its genuine meaning was not accessible anymore. And since then, you have this kind of dichotomy between Zahir and Batin, between apparent meaning and hidden meaning. Okay, here I'm just giving you an example for you to feel what is this withdrawal of tradition. Now, the withdrawal of tradition, you need to understand very concretely. For example, I think that after the 76 defeat of Nasser, Kulthum becomes withdrawn. Because Kulthum's real hype was during the time of the rise of Nasser and his conquest of the Suez, and he was about to win over the West and stuff like that. And it was really part of this culture. And then when he was defeated, it was over. And actually, he stopped singing really after that. And it becomes inaccessible. So if you want in Lebanon, you have the same things. You know, you have the Lebanon of before 75, which is today like a myth. This kind of golden age that you see in movies and stuff like that. Today, you can't really, it's withdrawn. You don't really understand how it was back then. Okay? So what Walid Raad is saying is when you have one of these surpassing disasters, a concept that he takes from Jalal Toufic, what really happens is that things lose their meaning. And this is why what we need to do is to have a kind of intuition about what could be valuable, and you take pictures of that in order to preserve them for the future, or else they will be gone forever. I hope it's clear what I'm saying. So today, we live then, for Walid Raad, in a situation where we have lost contact with meaning. And wherever you feel that, I want to take this picture, I feel it's important, but you don't know why, actually, without knowing it, you are preserving for the future, for a time where another generation will be able to be in contact with the tradition again, will be able to give meaning to what you have taken in terms of pictures and lines and the like. Okay. Hence, as you can see, this work is not about reflecting on painting, formal photography, and the like. I hope this is clear. It's clear for everyone. You see what he's saying here? He's not that, oh yeah, I'm reflecting on painting and photography. All what he says is, I'm putting aside as much as I can these kind of volatile intuitions of what can be valuable here and now, because I can't access their meaning anymore, but their meaning can be accessed later on. So I'll read you the quote by Jalal Toufic on that. So one should record this nothing, because when you are dealing with something of which you don't know its meaning anymore, it's like nothing. So you think that this blue is very important, but you don't know why. So it's like nothing. So one should record this nothing, which only affects the resurrection, which only after the resurrection can be available. When you are able to re-access meaning, what you see will be resurrected. So you have to record this nothing, which will be only available after the resurrection. We have to take photographs, even though because of the reference withdrawal. And until the reference are resurrected, they are not going to be available as referential documentary pieces, with the concomitant risk that that these things will be seen as formally attributed. Okay, so I repeat what I was saying. You have to record these things which are nothing, even if it looks formal. The meaning will come later on when or after the resurrection of some culture. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So in the same vein, I will move to another work by Walid Raad, which is Sweet Talk. Okay, so Sweet Talk.
For example,
Yeah.
the shades,
Yeah.
even now there's no meaning.
Yeah. So you look at this.
Even after.
Huh?
No, they won't find the meaning. Right?
What he's saying is that he felt that it's important for him to take this shape. Because maybe in this curve, there's something that a future generation with a living culture, they will be able to decipher. And he said, in these letters, what counts is not the I Ching, is maybe the curve of the G or the G itself, the way it's written. Why is he saying that? The important story is not that. The important story is that when you live in these situations where you have repetitive disasters like Nakba 1, Nakba 2, Lebanese civil war, Syrian war, Iraq war, bombardment by Israel in 2006. It never stops. Like each 5 years you have a disaster, and each 5 years you have a city which is eradicated. So the question becomes, how do you make pictures in this context? How do you make pictures in this context? And what Toufic and Raad are saying here is that first you have to be sensitive that meanings withdraw after these disasters. It's not that everything remains the same. So when you listen to music, Kulthum before and after the defeat of Nasser, it's not the same. If you look at a building before and after the bombardment by the Israelis, it's not the same. Really, try to live it. What I'm saying is not like, let's suppose you have a bombardment, they bombarded Dahir. Even your building, when you look at it the next day, how does it look? It looks like an apparition. I don't know how it looks. It looks like a miraculous something which is still there. Okay? So this is one of the experiences that you have to be sensitive to. So things don't become just what they are. They become like these weird things that surround you and you don't really have access to that. So this is why the gesture is to put what looks interesting for you aside for a possible resurrection. Now, of course, he's not saying that these things will be necessarily resurrected, but this is what he feels. He feels that...
What looks interesting to you?
Yeah.
For example, he feels like it's interesting for him, for example, the blue color.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
He doesn't know. But this is the whole idea. He doesn't know. He felt that actually this blue color has something, and he takes it and he puts it aside. So this allows him to preserve it for the future. Okay, I hope you're getting at least the story and the strategy. What is he really saying? What he's really saying is that today here in Lebanon, if you want to take a picture of something meaningful, what do you know what is meaningful and not? Because anyway, meaning has withdrawn. Meaning has withdrawn. Okay? So I'll show you, this is another project. I'll show you another project which is Sweet Talk. Now, Sweet Talk is part of the same. You see, it's like the Al-Hadas project, but as you can see now, the pictures are rounded. Pictures are rounded, and Walid Raad says that actually they are rounded because during the war they decided to document Beirut. It's like Al-Hadas, it's the same kind of story. So you have, and while documenting Beirut, they didn't want the militias to catch or to capture their negative, their prints. And this is why they invented a camera with circular negative that doesn't work, that only works in their cameras, so no one can take the negative and put it in another machine. This is why it's circular. Okay, I hope you got now the story behind why it's a circle. Okay. Now, whatever is the case, he made these pictures like an Al-Hadas kind of style, and he also put quotes from Adget and from events and, the things that you have seen. So now I'll read you the quote by Gilbert and the reply by Trabulsi. It's the same exercise. So Gilbert says, this notion of history as never on time saturates almost all aspects of your work, and I think is one of the keys to the subterfuge it employs. So Gilbert is saying you take pictures as if there's something which is never on time. Moving on from the exhausted postmodern trope of the uncoupling of the sign from its referent, you turn this into a larger historiographical and even political issue. I hope is this quote clear now? So what is he referring to, Gilbert? I hope now it rings a bell. If I read this sentence, which is moving on from the exhausted postmodern trope of the uncoupling of the sign from its referent, you turn this into a larger historiographical and even political issue. What is he thinking about, Gilbert? He say, I repeat, uncoupling the sign from its referent. Does this ring a bell? It's what? Huh? Nothing?
Meaning and reference?
Yes, thank you. What Gilbert is saying, when you uncouple the sign from its referent, the meaning from what you see, you, Walid Raad, you are doing that. You are uncoupling referent and sign. You are uncoupling meaning and what you see. And actually, you're doing a whole fuss about it because you're using it in art and politics and in everything. So he's referring here to the abstract object. So he's referring to this conceptuality that Walid Raad was using until 2004, which is a conceptuality that deals with abstract object and how documents determine them into objects. Now, I read you this, and you will see the break, because I insist on this break, because we are going to move into that soon. So, Trabulsi, which is a woman photographer, which is herself Walid Raad, it's one of the alter egos of Walid Raad, replied, I no longer feel this way. So I no longer feel that actually the problem is between the disconnection between the referent and the meaning. I no longer feel this way. In this regard, it has been productive for me to read and think with Jalal Toufic's books, especially forthcoming. The withdrawn referent in my earlier works, and my treatment of the documents I was producing as historical documents were not the result of a philosophical conviction imposed on my object of study. So what he's saying is that until 2004, he used to think like in postmodern thinking that things in relation to their referent are formatted by a gap in which you put on your ideology, which is a Marxist, Freudian, and Nietzschean reading of things. And now he's saying something different. He's saying that actually I'm unable to get to the meaning of something, not because of this game between referent and meaning, but because the meaning is withdrawn, which is different. What he's saying actually, when you take a picture and you can't take a picture of that, it's not because of the ideological play, it's simply because meaning as such has disappeared. Right? So this is, if you want, the move. I hope this is clear. Okay? Now, do you have questions on that, or I continue when it comes to the withdrawal of tradition and the new conceptuality? It's clear more or less. So I continue with the this kind of thing. And here I'm going to read you another one by Bochart Hume. Right? So I hope you got what we're doing. It's not that complicated. Each time someone refers him to a kind of Eurocentric, or in this case, postmodern way of thinking, he tries to bring him another reply, either from his experience, or now he's also using, intellectually speaking, Jalal Toufic to counter the postmodern trope. So, here, Bochart Hume says, when it comes to why Walid Raad is doing that and all the artists are doing that, and this actually you find it in many, many places. What I'm going to read you, you find it all over the place. It's one of these hegemonic way of thinking Lebanese art, meaning it's a way where everyone thinks it's obvious and this is how it is. And I hope you will be sensitive to the reply. To the reply by Walid Raad to that. So, Hume says, when it comes to why all of these young Lebanese artists are doing what they're doing, this is what he says, Hume. He says, schools in Lebanon can teach history only up to the country's independence in 1943, after which there is no consensus on the sequence of events, which makes attempts by writers and artists to come to terms with the country's recent history all the more persistent. My question thus is whether you think that the specifics of the historic situation in Lebanon, i.e. the civil wars and their legacy, may have both enabled and conditioned a new approach to image making. So what is he saying, Hume? Did you get what he's saying? So I'll put it in slang. What he's saying is actually you are doing what you're doing because the school books in Lebanon only cover until 1943, which is, by the way, not true. If I remember well, there's one that goes to 2005, and there's a historian who was objecting like crazy when someone said that. So there is a book apparently that goes to 2005.
The official books?
Yeah, in the official book. Yeah, but in the curriculum, there's a one that says that there's a book that went out, covering till 2000. This was in 2009, and she was saying that it covered to 2005. Anyway, we can check it. But the problem is not here. The problem is that, do you have books on Lebanese civil war or not?
Yes. Yes.
No, yes.
Books on.
Yeah, do you have books?
People writing it, but they don't.
You have actually plenty of books.
But it's
I mean, historically.
yeah, it's not it's not one story that they tell, the story of Rashaya or whatever. Just
people's ways of seeing the war.
No, you have many historians who work on the Lebanese war, and they are very serious, and they tell you this is what happened. If you read Trabulsi, the guy that was assassinated, the Beirut guy, Asir, Samir Asir, etc. You have a whole bunch of historians, Lebanese and not Lebanese, that really wrote many books on the Lebanese history, with case studies, documents, and whatever you want. So the history is available. And actually, there's a historian, I didn't check myself, but there's a historian that was an ecologian, and she said that they're working on a book that is supposed to cover until 2005, and it's going to get out soon. This was in 2010, if I remember well. So I think it should be out somewhere. But in any case, this is the argument. So I hope you understand the argument. Now, this is a very, very vicious argument, just for you to become sensitive to these things. Because does anyone do something just because there's a gap in the book? I don't know, really. Imagine yourself. You go like, what do? You buy the school book and you say, I want to do the missing story in the school. It's a bit absurd. You'll see why it's a bit absurd very soon. But this is a very, very common way of reading Lebanese contemporary art. It means that because the Lebanese state didn't write the official story, this is why the Lebanese artists, out of benevolence and out of their democratic and political consciousness, they are doing the story. So, number one, is Walid Raad himself writing the history of Lebanon? Definitely not. Is Walid Sadiq writing the history of Lebanon? Definitely not. Other people are writing that, and the artists dealing with that history, they're definitely not writing the missing history of Lebanon. Okay? I hope this is clear. Meaning, if you just look at what is being written and done, like that, or like Secrets of the Open Sea, see that actually what he says is that the history of Lebanon is not my problem. Of course, I relate to it, I dialogue with it, but I'm not telling you with these stories what really happened. I hope this is clear. This is if you just look at a factual kind of basis. So what are they doing then? So now I'll give you the reply by Raad to that. He says, in reply to the missing school book, stuff like that, and etc., he says, I'll quote at length here from Jalal Toufic. And before quoting at length, he says, actually, how do I relate to the history of Lebanon? He says, Walid Raad, that I relate to the history of Lebanon because Lebanon has produced a thinker, which is Jalal Toufic, and I admire him and relate to him. And this is what he says about history. So Jalal Toufic says, to remember or not remember, that is not the question, taken from his Undeserving Lebanon. To remember or not remember, that is not the question. So, you ask whether the civil wars and their legacy have both enabled and conditioned a new approach to image making. I answer that the protracted civil war in part produced a writer, Jalal Toufic, who has written that Lebanese artists have not divested, not remembering from forgetting, and have not made artworks, films, and videos that devise affirmative scenarios and strategies either to remember or not to remember, and who has also written that Lebanese artists have not made films and videos that explore post-war Lebanon as a labyrinthine ruin. Okay? So I put it in normal English. What he's saying is that Jalal Toufic wrote in Forthcoming that the temporal structure of Lebanon is that of a labyrinthine ruin. So you see, what Raad is saying is that we are not working because there's a lack, and we are trying to fill in the lack. Hume is saying, you artists, what are you doing? Well, you're doing what the democratic state should do, but given that there's no democratic state, you are filling the gap by producing, because you are cultivated and you are nice people and you are benevolent, you are filling the lack of the democratic state. So practically put, you are precursors of the democratic state. I hope this is clear. So what he's telling him is that when you do your art here, you see, there's corruption, there's this, there's that, and what you do is you try to denounce this and try to get to the democratic state, or you say there is no history book, so you bring in the history, you say there's no this, you bring in that. Okay. So what he's saying is that we're not doing that. If you are attentive to what is happening here, you see that the here is a labyrinthine structure. I hope this echoes a bit vaguely what Sadiq said about the labyrinth, Beirut as a labyrinth existing outside of Beirut, everywhere, etc. So if you are attentive to the time here, it's a time which is labyrinthine. Now, what is labyrinthine time? It's a time where you can not remember without forgetting, or remember while seeing it for the first time. Now things are getting a bit twisted, but it's okay. So let's suppose you walk in a destroyed place to make it easy. You have robbers and destruction, and you are walking there. Do you get lost?
Yes.
Yeah. If you watch the movie called Je veux voir by Haji Touma and Jerej, I hope you will watch it. We will cover it soon. It's a story about the bombardment by the Israelis in 2006, where Rabia Mroué and Catherine Deneuve go to the destroyed village of Rabia Mroué, and Rabia Mroué is trying to find his house. I really see him walk, and he's not finding his own house, the house of his grandparents. Say, maybe it's here. I don't know, I remember it was there, it's there. Why? Because when you have a destroyed scape, everything starts looking the same, and it is a labyrinthine space. Now, in these spaces, memory starts to play tricks on you. You go to a place, you are sure that you know that place, and you remember it, and you're sure that it's connected to that place, even though you also feel that it's the first time that you see this place, which is actually the first time that you see the place, but it seems to you that it's another place. Yeah.
Isn't it like downtown pre and post study there? After, like I hear from taxi drivers or my dad,
Yeah.
when they go to a manta'a, they're like, I know this manta'a, but it's not when it used to look like this.
Yes. It's very close to that, yes.
It's the same, it's like different build. I don't.
Yes, it's very similar to that. So you go to a place, you're sure that this is another place, but you're seeing it for the first time because it's renovated or rebuilt or wherever. It's in these lines, yeah. So what Raad is replying to him is saying, when you live in a labyrinth, which is a destroyed place, which is a place that is hit by these waves of violences, space itself becomes such that time itself starts to play tricks on you. It's not anymore normal time. You see, what is a normal time? A normal time is when you have a chronology. It's like Paris or London or these places. Now, why do you have a chronology in Paris and not here?
Because it's not destroyed.
It's not destroyed. You know, Paris is frozen and it's moving forward since, let's say, a good, 300 years. So this is when you have a chronological time, and you start thinking time only as chronology. Like, you know, we were here, we're moving forward, and you have actions, reactions, projections. You have a future, and you can be a precursor and an innovator and the like. And this is when you have a picture of time, which is a linear, chronological time. Now, in places where you have a disaster each less than 5 years now, it's shrinking. Like you have a disaster each 5-6 years, you can't really have a chronological time. And this is where your memory starts to play tricks on you. Because if you know a bit the theory of memory, memory works with anchors. What does it mean? It means that to remember, you need an anchor to remember. You know, your house is here, and your memories and the memories of the family become anchored in your house. Now, let's suppose you are all the time moving houses. You start having a very volatile memory. Right? Hope this is clear. If you did Deleuze aesthetics, you know that the theory of memory and the memory image, in order to remember, you need to have an anchor, and this is when you go and you remember and you go back to the anchor. So let's imagine we had still the Beirut souks. If you still have the city center, and not only the city center, practically half or 3/4 of Beirut, you and your dad, you can build on the memories of each other. Yeah, your dad will tell you, used to eat ice cream here, And you tell him, yeah, me too, I ate ice cream here. And you have this kind of communication between the memories. Right? So what Walid Raad is saying via Jalal Toufic, is saying here you can't just project on us a linear time. You're telling me that I'm just a kind of democrat who is just thinking about the missed democracy in Lebanon, and all my job is to move forward to build the democracy to come. What I'm telling you is that here you can't even have a linear time in order to build such projections in the first place. So this is why I'm telling you the story of the missing history books in the schools is really like, I don't know how to call it. You know, Guattari used to say it's very infantilizing. It's like as if they are kids, you know, these people, you know, Walid Raad, it's as if they are little kids, and all their dream is to be like France or like London or wherever, and they feel that there's something missing here, and all what they want to do is bring in democracy. It's not like that, because there's something which is much more interesting than that here. I'm not saying that democracy is not interesting there. Here, what's interesting is to be able to become attentive to what you have here. And what you have here is a labyrinthine space-time, which is very, very rare, and it's very, very awkward, because in labyrinthine space-time, if you are sensitive enough, you will see that your memory starts to function differently. For example, you can't put your memory with the memory of your mom together. When you go to the ice cream shop, your dad will tell you this place is as if it's another place, and you tell him, yeah, I was here, but actually I can't connect to that place you're talking about, and this is a labyrinthine form of memory.
Like parallel to each other.
Huh?
Like parallel.
Exactly, there's a kind of parallelism to each other. This is why Jalal Toufic tells another story to illustrate. And I hope you see that in this illustration there's an artistic creation. He says, in Lebanon it's quite weird, Jalal Toufic now speaking, it's quite weird that no one conceived a movie yet where they're going to send a Lebanese on a space travel to another branch of the multiverse. So they send you on a spaceship, and actually you fall in another section of the universe. And in this other section you have another Lebanon in which the war didn't happen. And you're coming from here, from the war, so you remember everything that happened here. But you go there, and you see people, the same people that you knew here, who were killed or not killed, whose houses were destroyed. You see them there. And there you see them, and you see that they're not remembering, but not because they forgot. And actually, you remember, and you see that they don't remember, and you have this kind of parallelism, and it's as if you're sitting on a line where you see the memories on that side, and these memories are not able to connect on the perceptions on the other side, and this creates this kind of labyrinthine weird memory. This is another form of memory that is here. It's a parallelism which is weird in a way, because you have these lapses and snaps in Lebanon. Personally, this is my interpretation, part of these weird memories and weird times that you have here is that in Lebanon, given the structure, which is a sectarian structure, you flip. And we heard it a little bit, not all the time, but one of the figures is the amnesiac figure that flips. I explain. You have, many, and we've seen it a little bit with Walid Raad, combatants' memoir. And not only memoir, you can see it on YouTube. There's a guy who is a very nice guy who used to massacre people. This is the flip. You see, you have a guy who really used to massacre people like Sabra and Shatila and this and that and on all sides, and the guy who did the massacres in the Jabal. And then you sit with him, he's drinking tea, and he tells you, yeah, but this is, it's another story. Okay, it's another story. It's as if he's not affected by that. And the interviewer in Jocelyn Saab's interview, she interviewed a combatant, a woman combatant, and she asked her, so do you have remorses or anything? She said, no, this was the war. Now we're outside of the war. I go to church, I do this, I do that, I'm continuing and you have this kind of gap. Okay? Now, I think, this is my reading of the text of Jalal Toufic, that these kind of very weird ways to relate to the past and to your present and who you were and who you are part of this dimension which is open during the war, which is a labyrinthine dimension. It's like a maze. It's not a maze. It's a labyrinth, where you have these jumps in time, or you have these places that you know but you don't know, or that relates to a past, but the past is not accessible anymore. It's just living in the head of some people, but not other people. And all of these things is what needs to be worked on. Okay? I hope you're getting now the difference. This is why when I tell you it's really ridiculous, this is what I think, to think that artists work out of lack, we don't have, abstract art, so let's do abstract art. Or we don't have democracy, so let's do it. It doesn't work like that. When you are an artist, I think you tap into a dimension. You tap into a dimension, and this dimension could be memory, it could be, it could be dreams, it could be whatever you want. I think the dimension these guys are tapping in is labyrinthine, delirious structures that was generated and still is generated in these areas of the world. Is this clear what I'm saying? So what they are doing really, and we'll see that in details in the coming session, what they are really doing, they're not just filling in the missing story. It's not true. What they are really doing, they are trying to bring about or to bring out all the aesthetics, speech, and visual forms that pertain to this lived situation. Okay, is this clear? So there is a situation, meaning there is a reality which is a full reality. It's not lacking anything. And this full reality is called the Lebanese wars, or the labyrinths of the Lebanese wars. And as artists, their job is to bring about the ways people lived, oriented themselves, remembered, dreamed, talked in this context of a near-death kind of situation.
Doesn't Walid Raad have this dimension? I got this from this dimension. I got this new information from this dimension. He says something like that.
From which dimension?
I got this from Ru'ya or something.
From the future. He has that, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll cover this in detail in the coming sessions. But at one point, just to refer to what you say, he says, in a surpassing disaster, actually, how do you know what to take, which picture you have to take? It's because from the future, they send you telepathic messages, and they tell you what you have to do and what you have to take. And you have to start becoming sensitive to the voices you hear in your head. And actually, one of the reasons, I didn't tell you that last time, that he doesn't like his talks to be recorded, is because he speaks about this kind of psychotic stuff. Like he says that, I'm hearing voices, and an artist from the future told me yesterday to go and photograph red. And Walid Raad says in an interview, he doesn't want anyone to have him on video saying that, because first, he doesn't want people to think that he's crazy, because he doesn't think that he's crazy. And second, he needs to look at the people when he says that to see if they too are hearing voices and if they agree with him, because for him this is a collective situation. So even the voices in your head could be sent to you by the future generation, asking you to document this color or that letter because they need it in the future. We'll see this soon, but I hope you see now this kind of labyrinthine time. It's not a progressive time that is just moving forward. Because of these ruptures, etc., you are moving in these labyrinths. Is this clear for everyone? Okay? So, to conclude, I hope you got today this opposition. You have a table of that in the notes, and you have all the quotes. And I just want you to become sensitive to that. Now, when you read an interview or when someone speaks about it, at least you should be able to detect, like, okay, now he's reducing him to singular universal, or he's telling him that you like this and you want to be democratic, or that, or, these are really readings and strategic readings. I don't say that they're all conscious. I'm sure that Bokhat Hume is very well intentioned, but his good intentions doesn't save him from imposing a Eurocentric grid in this case. It's obvious. You just need to read the interview. You see, this guy, he thinks that Walid Raad is a new Yves Klein. That's it. And his problem, Walid Raad, is to push the limits of photography, abstract art, painting, and the like. Well, what Walid Raad is saying is, no, I'm dealing with this situation, which is a labyrinth, which is immigration, which is violence, which is stuff that you cannot name anymore, or things which have two names, etc., etc. And this is what you need to start feeling. There's a positivity in the disaster. There's something positive, and it's not just negative and lack and destruction, and there's nothing here, which is actually part of the ideology of the immigration. How do you immigrate? You say, there's nothing here, I want to leave. And of course, why do you think there's nothing here? Because you look at France, you say everything is there. They have already democracy, LGBTQ rights, healthcare, ecological awareness, whatever you want. Free schooling, free universities, and all the famous artists are there, and the money too. So what am I doing here? Okay. So counter-attack. There is something here. If you want to leave, it's not a big deal, but there is something here. And what is here is actually very, very peculiar and has nothing to do with what is there. It's not. You cannot think it in the same way. You cannot think it in the same way, and you cannot think it as a lack of what is there. The way it's being portrayed, most of it, it's not there yet. Is this clear? Okay. And here I hope you see what it means to be culturally an activist and to resist ways of thinking, ways of making images, and ways of telling stories, because this is what is at stake. Do you have questions on that? No? Okay, so, yeah.
Does he actually believe the
What?
voices?
Yes. He actually believes that, and when we will start Jalal Toufic and Walid Raad, it's going to be even worse. What you can believe in.
Analyze.
Allah